hoarding snacks.
It's time for us to talk about our top 5 X-Men films. Now, look, we're not gonna dig too deep into this, right? Like, we'll give a little bit of a explanation for where we are. I think depending on what we've chosen and where they are. I don't know what your list is. You don't know
Same.
what my
I don't
list
know what your
is.
list is. I feel like we'll have
But
some similar things in our list. I feel like we probably are going to have them in different orders than anything else.
maybe. I don't really know where you sit in terms of how you feel about the X-Men films, like the X-Men franchise film specifically as a whole. I don't know that we've ever talked about that.
I don't think we
So
ever have. Yeah.
maybe let's kind of do that first to kind of preface, because when those films came out, we were very different times of our lives. So
Yeah.
like, so like where I was and what X-Men meant to me when the first X-Men film came out in 2000, I'm positive is very different from where you were. I don't even know what your knowledge of X-Men was like at that time.
I'll make it super easy actually on that one. For me, I watched the original X-Men cartoon when it came on Fox. So from
Okay.
there and within like
So 92.
in 92 and like Spider-Man and all them, I'm game for. I
Okay.
wasn't into comics probably like you were at that point to kind of know some more of the backstory and all of that. So all of my
Yeah.
X-Men experience was pretty much from the animated series on down
Okay.
from there.
Okay. I'm so never the comic books.
No, I didn't get into the comics probably until honestly, my comics probably didn't really start up until after Iron Man came out, and that was when I kind of
Okay.
shifted. Yeah, I didn't really have a big background in comics. Like I had a few, mostly just from random
Yeah.
occurrences to
Just
get them than anything else, but
yeah.
never as far as like collecting like a complete series really and reading and keeping up with it than anything else.
Got it.
Um,
Okay. Okay. Um and when for me when the first live action film came out in 2000, you got to remember that this is at a time when superhero movies still aren't really a thing. They're
mhm.
not a real thing. Like they're not a good thing anyway, right? Um so it's not that it was difficult to get excited about. Um I will say that thinking back to like the original trailer and first hearing about it and kind of knowing what they, not knowing exactly what they were going to do with it, but like
Mhm.
knowing like what characters were going to be in it. The only thing I can say that I recall being really excited about was the perfect casting that was Patrick Stewart as Professor X.
Mhm.
It is the one thing that was like perfect.
I
They
was
did it.
sold.
Gotta go see this. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything else, because truthfully, almost everybody else in it is a note. Like this is no, like we don't know these people,
hmm
with the exception of Holly Berry.
Halle Berry at
Which
that point.
Holly Berry as Storm was like,
It was still a
mm,
little like I was like I give it because it was Halle Berry at the time, and I was just like, okay, cool.
no, we didn't like that. We didn't like that. It's not because it's Holly Berry. No, we didn't like that. That is not what we wanted. We didn't like it. We wanted Angela Bassett, and it still should have been Angela Bassett. Like that's who's like. So at the time that it came out, like the kinds of conversations that we were having
hmm
as comic book heads, comic book nerds who grew up reading them and watching the cartoons and stuff like that or whatever, but like, you know, really reading the comics. Um no, these people like Hugh Jackman didn't have a name. We didn't know him.
No, not
We
at
didn't know
all.
Anna Paquin. You know what I mean? Like Taylor Maine was like a wrestler that nobody knew. Like nobody knew that dude, playing Sabretooth. Rebecca Romaine might have been the
Kind of been a
next
little bit,
most
yeah.
popular person in it. Femke Jameson, nobody, we didn't know her. Like, it's
Mm.
not that they hadn't done anything before, but they weren't like
Main,
household names, at
yeah.
least not to the movie going public that was gonna check in for an X-Men movie. Like, these
Mm-hmm.
people were not, this is not it. You know what I'm saying? Ian McKellen, there's no Lord of the Rings yet. Like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
Gandalf.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart have been doing stuff for years, but Ian McKellen was not a name we knew in America.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a Hollywood. These were not people who we could actually get excited about in terms of the casting. You know what I mean? Like, realistically, right? James Marsden, who is that?
Yep.
Like, we
Nope.
just didn't know. We just didn't know any of these people. Um, so, like, for it to come out at the time that it did, and to be technically as good as it
Mm-hmm.
was truthfully kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Like, it just was. You know what I mean? Um, and once they did it, I was like, all right, well, we gotta do another. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, having said that, it's been a lot of films. There are technically 14 films in the franchise overall, if you include the Deadpool movies. We're not talking about that.
Yeah, man.
We're doing X-Men stuff. This is where we are. But there are a lot of X-Men films. So let's go back and forth. Let's do our number fives
Dig it.
and then our fours, and then all right. So what's your number five?
Number 5 is X1.
So the first X-Men.
First X-Men movie.
Interesting. That's interesting. All right. Um, my number five is the third film, The Last Stand.
Ugh.
For real?
Listen, I need to go back and rewatch. Personally, me, out of the 3, I hated the third one. I don't know why.
Okay.
It just didn't. It didn't sit right with me for some reason. And I'm not talking about Professor X getting killed in there, because that don't get me wrong, that still traumatized me. But uh I don't know. The third movie, for whatever reason, just didn't resonate the same way. It seemed to me like that didn't seem like a trilogy wrap up type of movie to me. I felt like there was something that should have been more. But either way, I wasn't a
It.
big fan of the
I
third
mean,
one.
it wasn't like it wasn't really a trilogy wrap up. I don't think it was supposed to be the last
I don't think so either.
movie,
But
but again, they had already moved to a place
mm-hmm.
where Hugh Jackman was everything, and we're going that direction. So
Yep.
that's it's Wolverine. We gotta go that road, and that's what they did next. All right, what's your number four?
X2.
X2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, mine is Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think that Days of Future Past is a better story. I don't necessarily think it's a better
Yeah, it was bound to happen. Man.
story. They didn't like that at all.
There you go.
They didn't like that at all.
Not at all.
I think that Days of Future Past compared to Last Stand for my last two,
Mm-hmm.
I think Days of Future Past is a better story
Mm-hmm.
from comic book across the board than The Last Stand is a story. But The Last Stand might be a better movie. I think that the story of Days of Future Past end up making for a better movie
Mm-hmm.
in the end.
You know what? Cuddy just brought up something. Yeah, because like it definitely wasn't set up as the last from the post credit scene of Professor moving his mind to another body. Very
Correct.
very valid.
Correct.
Hey,
That's
and funny he brings that up, because and this is also before like after credit scenes were really a thing. So my dad took me to. It wasn't the full on norm, I guess would be the way to say it, because I went and saw this with my dad,
mhm.
and when the credits rolled, we dipped.
Of course you did.
I did not originally see the after credit scene for that movie. And
Mm.
it wasn't. I wasn't until I'm trying to even remember. Someone said something to me and was like talking about the after. I'm like, the hell are you talking about? What is an after credit scene? And saw it afterwards, and I was just like,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. What's your number three?
crazy enough, number three is First Class for me. Um,
Yep. I don't like that, but
I know
okay.
you. I knew you weren't.
I don't
Listen,
like that at all.
First Class is excellent. I mean,
I agree.
it's it is like this is more of the personal things that come into play, but I think they did everything right with First Class. Like
I I 100% agree.
I have no gripes or anything with First Class. I
Not at
think
all.
they reintroduced everyone in a good way without, and then actually taking out, like, say, Wolverine, which was at that time, was probably the front and center person, and not actually utilizing him in there. They did a great job
Yeah,
at
not
not
probably.
doing that.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, number three is First Class for me.
My number three is the original X Men.
Mm.
I think the first X Men film. I think that first movie again, like it hasn't aged super well,
Yeah.
but what's interesting about looking at movies now, I think the internet has made it so that we as the going public have such a better understanding of how movies are made and what the technology is that goes
Mm-hmm.
into making movies, and especially in that time frame, DVDs were a big deal, not just because of the quality of the video and the format, but because of the DVD extras. That was
Mm-hmm.
such a big deal. And many times you had the audio that was on it that was telling you about, you could watch the movie with the audio of them explaining how they shot things or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and you got a lot of behind the scenes stuff that otherwise you wouldn't get until like maybe way later or something like that. And literally having rewatched that first film this weekend, I don't know if I would have put it in as my third if I hadn't just rewatched it. It it is it is definitely a product of its time in terms of what the like the CG looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, like it actually as a movie it holds up pretty well. If you can get past the things that we hated when it first came out, which was yellow spandex, um, and like some of the things they didn't quite do right with like Rogue or something like that.
Yeah.
But overall, these are, I mean, it's my tops. I think that's my number three. What's your number two?
Number two is Logan.
Hmm.
Um, I
Now,
thought.
I'm just gonna say now, I didn't include any Wolverine films in this. I only did X Men
Mm,
films. I didn't do any, and I'm cool with you picking Logan, but if I will tell you right now that if I was gonna include Wolverine films in it, Logan
mm,
is the best film out of all of these joints. It would
mm,
be my number one if
mm.
I was gonna do that. I don't think they have a better movie than that, but we'll see what your number one is,
I
and I
think
will
you already
judge you
you.
accordingly.
I feel like you already know what it is.
I'm
Uh,
not sure that I know what it is based on Logan being
mm.
where it is. I'm not positive, but why Logan where it is.
Um, I think same thing. Logan was a great wrap up story for Wolverine. I thought they did
Okay.
a great thing, and of course, there were a few X Men characters that were in ways and forms sprinkled throughout in there, including, of course, Professor X, who at that point that was the second time I'd seen Professor X die on screen, and I'm just like, don't do that to me again. Um,
And you be all right. We saw it.
we're up
It
to
has
what?
happened again.
We're at four. I think are we at three or four? Must
Three
be
at least.
three. Three. Yeah, three.
Doctor
Third one
Strange.
didn't hit as much because it was like, okay, we're in multiverse territory now, so it really is kind of irrelevant at
I
this
don't know.
point.
That joint was still rough, but yeah, yeah.
But no, the story for Logan was just absolutely incredible. Um, being able to take like the old man Logan story and being able to put it in a movie format while still trying to stay in the confines of where we were doing with the live action movies. I was really impressed at the way they were able to handle that and actually get
Yeah.
it out for it. Especially taking out, obviously not having like Hulk and things like that. Like at least by this time now, I was more fully, what's the word I'm looking for, in tune with things that happen in the comics.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, okay, how do you do a story like this when you take out some of those main elements?
Yeah.
But they were able to nail it to the T, give us a couple new characters, talking like X-23, and potentially being able to build off of something like that into the future, which we did go back and we ended up touching back on again with Deadpool Wolverine.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was taking what at the time we're saying like a superhero movie and really giving it like that Western feel,
Yeah.
which was a little bit different, which I really liked what they did for it.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought they
I'll take that.
executed Logan to the T.
So my number two is X2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the second X-Men film, more or less, perfectly takes everything they did right in the first X-Men film and steps it up a notch.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is a bit, and it is it's everything you want a sequel to be. Like I don't honestly feel like you can think that the first X-Men movie is better than the second X-Men movie. Like it
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what a sequel should be. It
Mm-hmm.
is what you got in the first one that you loved, removing many of the things you didn't like or weren't quite there, and being like, all right, we did well, we made a lot of money, we can take that money and put it back in and we can take everything up a notch. And I just think they did it's again, once you accept the franchise for what it is, I
Mm-hmm.
think at the time it was still very, very difficult for people to accept that the things that they were doing on screen didn't match exactly what happened in the comics, right? We would have a lot of those conversations leaving the theaters or going into the theaters or whatever, going, well, that's not what really happened. We would hit the actually in the comics. They like, and that's which is still part of it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like we allow them to exist as their own universes the way that comics have multiple universes and stuff like that. We began to treat the X-Men films. I think it's at that point that we
Mm-hmm.
really did accept that, like, okay, it's different from the comics and it's okay for it to be different from the comics, right? And it kind of solidified itself that way. And Holly Berry gave up the accent because that joint
Mm-hmm.
was trash in the
Yeah,
first one. Just be Holly, man. Don't
that's
you know what
it.
I mean? Like just yeah. All right, what's your number one?
My number one is Days of Future Past.
Okay.
Um, uh, before we got fully like I know this will cut it, before we got fully tainted on the Jennifer Lawrence piece of it, like I thought Days of Future Past was put together really well. Especially trying to take, you know, OG cast and being able to incorporate the new cast to go alongside with them. Um
Yeah.
I thought at one point there was gonna be like a lot of clashing between, jumping from the past to the future. Like sometimes with time movies, it could be a little iffy.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought he did a really good job at putting the film together. Um, Obviously, by the time we get to the end, really, it's hard to say that it was solidified that which variation of the X-Men were going to be in existence at that point.
Yeah.
Because obviously we have the new cast, but then we went back fully to the old cast, so it was kind of like, okay, interesting. But this is probably where we started entering multiverse territory. We had just really started to scrape that surface, so it was something to believe in. But I really enjoyed what they did with bringing the two teams together and making it work for it. Um, Giving us some of the true X Men, having like Sentinels and all that. Well, granted, we've seen them in the original
Yeah.
movies, but it was different with the way the variation they were trying to do it with the future ones, because the future Sentinels were a
Bananas.
problem.
Yeah.
Were a problem
Bananas.
um,
Murderer.
of everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, Days of Future Past for me.
I mean, again, I just rewatched that over the weekend again. Um, it's a it's a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good movie. I still have the issues of, again, the like focus on Mystique and all of that kind of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
we've talked plenty of times about like where I think that ended up being a folly for the films, not for the business, but for
Right.
the film. And the storytelling that revolved around that. But for me, my number one is First Class.
Mm-hmm.
I think First Class is the most perfectly executed X-Men film that has ever been done. Again, when I say that, I mean X-Men. Like, I didn't pick anything that doesn't have X-Men in the title,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I might have been like, you could have done X-Men Origins Wolverine, but if that was in your top five, I was just gonna kick you off the show.
Oh no, that wasn't
So,
dope.
so I'll take a Logan. You know what I'm saying? By comparison, but like that First Class is so well done
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the sheer number of characters they introduce, going hard and like offing some characters. You know what I mean? If you will, not happy about it, but it happened. Um, but I actually think I don't think it's just the best film from a like a. I think cinematically,
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that it's shot, I think the way the characters are acted, I think that there was so much content that already existed for
Mm-hmm.
these new actors to pull from in those roles, um, that they they took it to a new level. And I was very surprised. And I like the idea of them showing them operating in the 60s, tying it into the things that X-Men has always been tied to. They've always been tied to things that were actually happening in history. So tying them
Mm-hmm.
to like the Cuban Missile Crisis and like all that kind of stuff. And really taking the opportunity to say, this is why Charles Xavier can't walk. Here's what it is. Here's whose
Mm-hmm.
fault it is. Here's how it happened. It was dope. Like, it's dope. And it's still like, I think it's a better movie than any of the rest of the movies in the franchise, probably except for Logan.
Mm-hmm.
I think Logan is a better movie. Just hands down, anybody can sit down and watch Logan, whether you care about superheroes or not. I think First Class is the best of the best as far as before it got like out of hand. Um, Jennifer Lawrence out of hand.
Yeah.
So that's where we have it. Do me a favor, let's revisit your top five, and we'll revisit mine.
Cool. So number 5 is X1.
Mhm.
4 is X2.
Mhm.
3 is First Class. 2 is Logan, and 1 is Days of Future Past.
Okay, mine is number 5, X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Number 4, X-Men Days of Future Past. Number 3, X-Men. Number 2, X2, X-Men United.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 1, X-Men First Class. I think they're two pretty solid lists.
Loading snacks.